Hello, everybody. My name is Jordi Vivaldi. I'm an architect and philosopher from Barcelona. Through this seminar, which takes place in the coming summer semester here at ATTP, I would like to discuss and research the topic of hospitality, but also and especially its articulation as a form of cosmetics. So we will read hospitality as a play of hide and seek between host and guest, a pact that demands both to be open to and open by the other or the another. But this pact is also a political commitment, is a commitment that involves the community and even the generation or the generations or the coming generations. No? So hospitality then will be read as a collective endeavor, but a collective endeavor that today, in the context of Anthropocene, demands to go beyond the traditional human focus of hospitality in order to include as well human and non-human agencies, right? So it is in this context that this seminar poses some questions. What does it mean to be hospitable on a planet shared with multi-species modes of inhabitation? How can they take place in our place? How to give ourselves spaces of inhabitation that are hospitable enough to live together well. So we will deal with these questions through a multidisciplinary approach to the notion of limit. So if inhabitation demands the production of spaces within spaces, the limits mediating them seem to be crucial. However, we will connect the notion of limit with that of hospitality by expanding the usual enclosure role that the limit has in architecture. So we will then ramify the notion of limit in three different codes. The limit contour, limitation, where does something ends, the limit action, limitrophy, how far the power of something go, and the limit milieu, liminality, what territories might be opened within the limit itself. So the intertwinings between these three forms of limit will accommodate the cosmetics of hospitality proposed in this seminar. Cosmetics that should be read as articulations of spatial forms of order and decorum, addressing all what can be considered, yet without saying it all. No? In this consideration, we will produce, or we will aim at producing different figures of hospitality, right? So these figures of hospitality will be worked by each one of the students, and they should not be read as hermetic monads, but as interactive devices. No? So it's actually the different interaction between these different figures that constitute this notion of cosmetics that we are saying here. No? So these figures are actually vectors, or are actually motifs that allows us to unpack this, or to disclose different facets of the practice of hospitality, right? So in order to deploy these figures, we will be doing several readings, 6 in particular, week by week. In these readings, Stacy Alaimo will help us to connect, on the one side, multi-species and the post-human with the notions of pleasure and intimacy. With Gilles Deleuze, we will explore the notion of limit, together also with his writings on Spinoza. Vincent Desprez will help us to establish a conversation between the concept of empathy and the concept of syntonization or tuning, in order to enrich the practice of hospitality today within the Anthropocene. The work of Rick Dolphin will help us to overlap two forms of opening, to be open to something and to be open by something, and how both of them might be necessary in order to establish a practice of hospitality that is adequate to our times. Joseph Rickwert, in his book The Idea of a Town, will help us to understand how these practices of hospitality might crystallize in spatial forms, and more in particular through the deployment of limits. And finally, Emmanuel Coxea, in his Filosofia de la Casa, will help us to understand the domestic space is actually composed of two different forces. On the one side, the domestic space has different rhythms and tempos and behaviors regarding the outdoors, but at the same time, the domestic space is composed by nothing but the material reality that lies in the outside. No, so it's in this twofold approach that lies the particularity of the home. No, so in order to approach the exercise that underlies this seminar, which is the writing of a paper that will need to be delivered after the summer, we will be working in different weekly exercises. No? So these weekly exercises, which are the construction of a glossary, the connection in between different quotations of different texts, the introduction of a text that is outside of the bibliography of the seminar, the introduction of some images. No? So these different exercises will help us to prepare or to deploy the different facets that each one of the figures might have. And since these exercises are then discussed in a collective manner within the class, we will also see how these different figures are capable of establishing interactions in between them and therefore of constituting a form of cosmetics. No, finally, this set of exercise will help us in order to prepare the writing of a seminar paper that, as I said, needs to be submitted at the end of this endeavor after the summer, and that will be composed of around 8 or 12 pages. So this is all from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm looking forward to seeing you all.